Today I review all the gold and rainbow gear that was added to the Gear Lab on Christmas Day. This includes both new gear as well as old PR5 gear. So I'll go through these gears one by one in an arbitrary order, not necessarily from best to worst. I include some screenshots from the Gear Lab guide like this at the bottom, and for the meanings of the columns you can look at the guide itself and click this columns and rubric to expand it. But basically next best is the next best easily obtainable gear. Gain is the gain over that gear. And then we have worth for campaign, worth for single target if you have a lot of resources. And if you don't have a lot of resources, then you can check the new player column. So first in this arbitrary order is the skip bomber. And skip bombers are essentially converging torpedo bombers in a dive bomber slot. This gold skip bomber does about 20% more damage than Helldiver against non-moving bosses only. Plus it has 20 more aviation stat. Against moving bosses though, they will miss enough to make it worse than Helldiver. Compared to Tenrai against a large boss hitbox like 5.5 by 10, this thing does 10% less light and heavy damage than Tenrai does, and 20% less medium damage than Tenrai does. And Tenrai has another 20 aviation on top of that for the whole carrier damage. Against smaller hitboxes like 5.5 by 8, the gap closes a bit, but Tenrai is still better. And that's only comparing this skip bomber to other dive bombers. If you look at converging torpedo bombers, it's significantly worse. So you only use this skip bomber in dive bomber only slots if you don't have Tenrai or Sky Raider. So in conclusion, it's too expensive for too little gain over this Helldiver, so I would recommend to skip from the Helldiver straight to Tenrai. Since the dive bomber slot is the weakest slot in single target bossing anyways, this gain isn't a lot. And besides, if you've been playing the game long enough to have the materials to craft this plane, then you probably are close to a Tenrai from Protocore shop anyways. Next is the old Plymouth gun from PR5, and it's the best CL gun still. Of course, as the only rainbow CL gun, it's spammable on every BB and every CL, or basically every CL. Although it's a low priority for new players, you eventually want a lot so that you can actually spam it on every BB and CL. Low tier for new players, high tier for old players. And you can look for 1 to 5 of these to begin with. Keep in mind that this quantity includes the gear you get from other sources as well, so if you buy one from Protocore shop, that counts towards this 1 to 5. Next we have another rainbow, G7E Improved. Compared to the G7E Gold that we already have, this thing has 20 more torpedo, which is worth about 2% more damage for the whole submarine. So if you put this in 2 slots instead of just 1 slot, then that would be 4% more damage for the whole submarine. Unfortunately, the rainbow one is slower to reload than the gold by 0.5 seconds, and this is a downside of course, although it does do 13.75% more damage than the gold does, like straight raw damage, not including the torpedo bonus. And since data mine has been reinstated on the official Discord server, I can tell you that everything else about these is identical between the gold and rainbow. So the rainbow improved does not have better tracking. And since data mine has been restored, I was also able to simulate the effect of this lower reload time. So from the raw damage we have 13.75% more, and from the torp we have 4% more. But in the end, it's only an 8% to 16% damage increase versus the gold G7E due to the slower reload. Still though, it's a straight upgrade over the gold G7E. There's no case in which the rainbow is worse than the gold. I would also say this rainbow G7E is stronger than bitter 99% of the time. It's also probably stronger than Type 95 Kai, which is the other rainbow submarine torp, in campaign. But against single target bosses, I would say that the Type 95 Kai is better in general, and especially so, like certainly so, if you bring slow or freeze like you should. But to determine the overall priority of this G7E Improved in the Gear Lab, we have to know that submarines are low priority and gold plates are limited, because rainbow costs 3 times the gold plates of gold. And the plus 13 gold G7E is better than a plus 10 rainbow G7E. You can feel free to plus 13 a lot of gold G7Es because you can recycle these plates later when you upcraft them into rainbow. And for that reason, I also do not recommend you to plus 13 any more bidders. So overall, not recommended for new players at all, and for old players, it would be below the S tier in other slots. And you can get 0 to 6 G7E Improves and 0 to 6 Type 95 guys. As I said, Type 95 is better in single target, while G7E is better in campaign. But the difference is small, usually, and submarines don't matter enough to think about the difference between them. Next we have old gear Chafayev gun. Like, this is so old. It's also in the core data shop, and it is not worth buying from the core data shop. If you're an old player with a lot of resources, just craft more Plymouth guns, because obviously it's better. If you're a new player and you focus PR8 like you should, then you have Donskoy guns, which are better than Chafayev guns as well. If you didn't follow guides and you focus PR6, then you have Felix gun, which is comparable. If you focused on PR7, which is reasonable, like PR8, then you can craft this Chafayev gun, or you can craft triple 155 Kai. That's already in Gear Lab. So these two guns are basically the same, but this Chafayev gun is cheaper in Gear Lab because it doesn't cost a lot of T2 ordnance, and the triple 155 Kai is more expensive in exchange for being usable as a battleship auxiliary as well in Chapter 14. This thing is new, and it's more expensive than and weaker than the previous, so you don't craft it. Now we have a purple, the only purple that's worth looking at. This is the second fastest CL gun at 1.50 seconds, after the single 150 at 1.38 seconds. And this thing does more damage for its longer reload. It's about 20%, 11% or 13% more damage against light, medium, and heavy. But the reason you use either of these guns is for the fast fire rate, not the damage. So will this damage increase make up for the slower reload? According to me, it's a toss-up depending on the ship. In the first place, very few CLs want either of these guns, and of those who do, all of them prefer the rainbow gun, which is now mass-producible. So these two purple guns are only in consideration for new players. And some of these ships prefer the single 150, and some of them prefer the single 180. But seriously, the difference is tiny between these, even in these cases. So in conclusion, just keep on using the single 150 from tech boxes. And by the way, the relevant CLs who fit this are basically only Ryu Leon and Momo, both of them collab ships. Now we have Kronstadt gun. This is a CB gun for large cruisers, and it's slightly stronger than the Azur gun. Azur gun costs 6 T2 ordnance, and it also costs the Odin gun, which itself costs 6 T2 ordnance and 20 electronics. Kronstadt gun costs 48 electronics instead, which could be arguably cheaper, but in any case it's slightly stronger than Azur gun. So even if it's the same cost, in your opinion, then I would recommend the Kronstadt gun. But keep in mind that there will be a Guam gun rerun in 3 weeks, starting on January 15th. And obviously Rainbow good, and you don't need that many CB guns, especially AP CB guns. Maybe you use one CB at a time, and this Rainbow will be all you need. So as a result, Kronstadt gun is somewhat worth, but if you're gonna pick up this thing in 3 weeks anyways, then just don't craft any Kronstadt guns. And because of this addition, we also removed the Azur gun from the Gear Lab guide. Now we have two twin 130mm. This Soviet one was in Core Shop. It was not worth getting from Core Shop, while this Chinese one was available from PR5 research. These two are basically the same, and in the Gear Lab, this Chinese one requires the Soviet one. So basically don't craft the Chinese one because you're paying resources for no gain. The competitor to Twin 130 is the Twin 128, which has Pierce and better medium and heavy damage as it is AP ammo. But the problem with this Twin 128 is that there are even better gold guns for medium and better gold guns for heavy, both of them in Gear Lab. So maybe get one of each at most, so one of these 128s and one of these 130s, and then wait for the rainbow guns. Do note that the past 3 URDDs, that is William G. Porter, Z52, and Trafalgar, have all been able to use the fast gun, so they don't need any of these rainbow guns or gold guns, which decreases their priority. Finally, I'll lump all of these other PR5 gear together because they're not worth. This Su-2 is slightly better than Helldiver against light only. It wasn't even worth crafting even if you got it from PR5 research, so skip, easy. Parallel Vit 2 is a skip because you can go from Barracuda directly to Breguet or Wyvern. It's not that hard, and this thing is not such a big improvement over the Barracuda. The quadruple 30mm was at below average AA gun already, and in Gear Lab it is super expensive, so not worth at all. And the brush gun is also a CB gun. It's worse than Kron and Azur guns overall, so don't craft it. And that wraps up the Gear Lab update for December of 2025. Now, of course, this is referring to the upgrade tree, not to the Soviet gun itself.